everyone, I'm currently in a cornfield patch. Here is the recap of game 3. I was paired against a 0 rated player. So these are always like a wild card, right? It could be a really strong player online who has never played a FIDE tournament, or it could be a medium player online who has never played a FIDE tournament. I don't know going into this round. At this point in the tournament, I need a bounce back win. So here's the recap of game 3 that I'm gonna do in the cornfield patch. So I go into this game and my opponent has 1.5 out of 2, which is more points than me at this point in the tournament. So it kind of messes with you psychologically, like, is this guy really good? So we start off the game, I have the white pieces, and I start with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5. So far so good, Italian. Then I go c3 to threaten the push d4, which I had played in round 1 against my opponent with the black pieces, and then he goes knight f6. So at this point in the game, I think of round 1. That round 1 was publicized, and you can find it on chess.com, find it on Chess, you can find it everywhere. So I did the strategical move to not go d4, which I played in the round 1. So I go d3 here, kind of closing it up a little bit and playing more patient, something that we learned from round 2. Okay, d3, my opponent goes d6, castles, and then bishop e6. Bishop e6 is where we leave theory. This is the first turn where I think I thought a lot. I go bishop e5 because I didn't want to go knight bd2 and take back the bishop. I wanted to conserve my pieces to dominate more with a lot of pieces later on in the game. So I'm kind of preserving my pieces here, playing bishop e5. Addition to that, bishop e5 threatens d4 winning a piece. So let's say my opponent does a non-cautious h6. Now I have d4 attacking the bishop and the pawn. If you take my pawn, I take yours, still attacking the bishop. Bishop moves, and then I have this beautiful fork on d5, hitting the bishop and the knight. After bishop e5, he goes bishop d7, which is not that good. Since we are converting this is transposing into a re-Lopez. Okay, re-Lopez opening is when you go directly with the bishop b5, also known as the Spanish opening. But bishop d7 in the Spanish is not very common or good. So in this transposition, I feel like I have won, quote unquote. And so I go h3 here, just to play against like bishop g4 things in the future. a6 is played, typical re-Lopez, because now I go back with my bishop, b5, and bishop c2. This is like typical re-Lopez. Blacks gains like a typical re-Lopez pawn structure, and I gain a typical bishop of the re-Lopez. Now you might think, okay, my bishop is bad, it's behind my pawn structure. This is a bishop you invest in the stock market. You wait a couple months, and the bishop will return some dividends for you, okay? That was the play here. And so now h6 indicates that they want to take off the square for my bishop g5. That would inflict a really nice pin on this knight and queen, and they're preparing castles. So it's kind of like a preliminary move that you're playing before you can castle with coziness, right? So I go with rook e1, castles, and then knight bd2. Knight bd2 is a classic plan in the Italian and in the re-Lopez, in which white has a pawn on c3, which takes up that natural square for the knight. So white will do a maneuver with knight bd2, knight f1, and knight g3, or knight e3 from f1 here, and essentially get a piece on the king side to help out. So knight bd2, and this is the first mistake of the game by my opponent, knight e7. Super inaccurate. Here they're trying to do the same thing I am with another knight maneuver, but the thing is, the knight on c6 is a crucial piece. Why? Because it takes up d4 and it defends this pawn on e5. And so when you take off both of those presses with knight e7, I can play d4 now, because the knight is not hitting d4, nor is the knight defending this pawn. So d4 forces pawn takes, otherwise on bishop back I just win a pawn with takes, which would not be the case if the knight was on c6, right? So pawn takes is forced by my opponent, I take back the pawn, the bishop goes back to a7, and I have a beautiful center, and my opponent's pieces are quite passive here on e7 and d7. And now I complete my development. Knight f1, rook e8, again a passive move. I go knight g3, and then my opponent goes rook b8. Again, a questionable move. I don't know what rook b8 really does. And in hindsight, this is like a waiting move that is in a position where you can't play a waiting move. e5. And I've been waiting to play e5 for a long time, and now is the perfect moment since my knight just arrived on g3. And I'll explain why. So e5 takes up space, which is generally good, and takes up another square in the center, which is also generally good, and plays on the weakness of this knight on f6. The knight on f6 does not have many squares, since my knight on g3 has arrived, right, taking up that h5 square, but the knight still doesn't have many squares at all, even discounting that. It can go to h7, but it can't go to e8, can't go to d7 because of that bad bishop, and can't go to g8, right? So after takes, this knight literally has two options, knight fd5 and knight h7. If you go knight h7 here, for example, I have this really nice bishop takes h6, sacrificing a bishop for 2 pawns. So after takes back, I go queen d2 attacking this pawn. It's very hard to defend it. You can't defend it with king g7 because I have knight h5 check. And now the king has to go back, and now I come in with a huge attack threatening mate a few ways here. And so the best move here is just to protect your base with knight g6, and I take a pawn on h6 with a very lovely attack, knight h5, right? And this gives a small advantage to the white pieces. Now, my opponent played knight fd5, which looks really good, right? The knight is central, and the knight is looking nice. But here I have a really nice move, and that is queen d3. Queen d3 is a great move that goes on the weakness h7. A new weakness, because I devied the knight off of h7. And here we're threatening queen h7, not with mate, but with a really nice queen there. Because on king here, queen h8 would be mate, knight g8 defends well, right? But I am threatening queen h7 with good chops. So queen d3. Let's look at all the different possibilities of defense here. Black has many. A lot of them are bad. Knight f5 or bishop f5 gives a piece, right? Because my knight will just take. And that's why I brought my knight to g3, because when calculating that e5 push, nothing worked until I had a piece to cover f5. Otherwise, bishop sends my queen back home and just trades off my really good light squared bishop. So I had to wait until I had a knight here. Okay, so you can't play there. If you go knight g6 to block this h7 square, your knight is undefended on d5. And so now I can just take and win a piece. If you play g6, I have this really nice tactic. Really nice. It's super silent killer-esque, right? I have queen d2 attacking this pawn, and we're just going off this weakness. It's as simple as that. You can't defend this pawn with a king, because I'll just take it. It's defended by a bishop here. You can't play h5 either. It gives queen h6, and I'm threatening knight takes h5 with nastiness here. So you have to go g5. g5 to block. And what does this create? Another weakness. Weaknesses create weaknesses. So that's why we pressure weaknesses, so that they can create more weaknesses, etc. On g5, now I have queen d3. Queen d3 threatening queen h7, and black has no defense here. So that would have been really nice. But my opponent went for f6. There's also f5, which is similar. But f5, I go e6 as well, just as in the game. And it's pretty over. The bishop goes here, and then I can take the pawn on f5, and I'm super winning, right? So this is a really nice interception tactic, getting the bishop off of f5 on tempo. But f6 is the same thing, though I keep my diagonal. So it's really, really nice. Here I missed queen h7 check, king here, bishop takes h7, threatening this, rook g8, sorry, and then knight h5, and this is GG's, because I'm preparing to take on f6 with knight g5 check. It's really, really over. I missed that, which would have been plus 10, but I played plus 5 option. It's okay. So here we're threatening the bishop, and we're threatening mates with queen h7, and if you don't sack your bishop and take the pawn, well, that's what happened. I have queen h7 check, king f8, and the final move of the game, bishop takes h6, and here my opponent resigned. If you take, I'm mating on f7, and it's really difficult, or more so impossible, to defend this g7 square, onto which I'm threatening to inflict checkmate. After bishop takes h6, my opponent lended his hand, and at the end of the game, I said, good luck for the rest of your tournament, and in a very cute Portuguese accent, it was a kid, he says, I watch your videos, I'm a fan. So that's it, I played a fan, and it was really, really nice experience. Thank you guys so much for watching. A quick round 3, only 22 moves. And tomorrow I am paired again against a 0 rated opponent. Hopefully it goes as well as today. If you want to see this live, it's on Twitch every day for the next 6 days with commentators and a live analysis board of the game being played out. So that's really amazing. See you soon. Sending you love. Have a great day. I'm in a corn patch right now. Don't go into these. I heard that the leaves cut like crazy, like they're literally blades.